The Son of Man came to serve and to give his life as a ransom for all.
The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Luke. When the days drew near for Jesus to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem, and he sent messengers ahead of him. On their way, they entered a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him. But they did not receive Jesus because his face was set towards Jerusalem. When his disciples, James and John, saw it, they said, "Lord, do you want us to command fire to come down from heaven and consume them?" But he turned and rebuked them, saying, Then they went on to another village. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Luke chapter 9, verse 51 says, when the time came for Jesus to be taken up, he set his face to go to Jerusalem. This verse, Luke chapter 9, verse 51, is a highly theological verse. And in our Catholic liturgical system, it has been the source of many interpretations. One interpretation is what is called ad Orientem. Ad in Latin means towards. Orient means east. So the theological debate is that Jesus, despite the fact that he lived all his life in Galilee, the province of Galilee, but when the time came, he set his face towards Jerusalem. Jerusalem is in the east. And so in the church today, there are some people who still hold to this verse to say we must face the east. You know, in the Vatican I Mass, remember, the priest has to face the east, even if it demands that the priest turns his back on the people, like the Latin Mass in the Tridentine Mass. We still do ad Orientem. And it flows from this verse that Jesus has his face set towards Jerusalem. And setting his face towards Jerusalem means Jerusalem is the place to go. It is the place where Jesus was going. That was the reason why he came. Jerusalem was very important, and he had to go there. Because people have often asked, why didn't Jesus end up his life in Bethlehem or Nazareth or Capernaum or Galilee? Why Jerusalem? You know, in Luke, now this is Luke chapter 9, verse 51. In Luke chapter 13, verse 33, Jesus is going to say, it is impossible for a prophet to die outside of Jerusalem. And so in our interpretation of Jesus setting his face to go to Jerusalem, we talk about why Jerusalem. It is not just a relocation of where he used to be from Galilee to go to Judea or go to Jerusalem. It has theological significance. And so when in 1965, when between 1962 and 1965, the Vatican II Council, when they were changing the ad Orientem to say now the priest can face any place instead of just facing the east, doing ad Orientem Mass. The argument that was used, the bishops of Vatican II, says it is not so much the east that matters. It is not so much Jerusalem that matters, but it is what he is going there to do that is important. And what was Jesus going to do in Jerusalem? Jesus is going to inaugurate the first thing, the Last Supper. When he gets to Jerusalem, the first thing is the Mass, the Holy Eucharist. The second thing, he goes to Gethsemane, the Garden of Gethsemane. The third thing, he takes the cross. The fourth thing, he dies on the cross. And the fifth thing, the resurrection, followed by the ascension. And so the Vatican II says, that is what we call the mysteries of faith. That is what we celebrate. All our celebration should be about what happened in Jerusalem. That there should be less emphasis on whether we are facing the east or whether the priest or churches should face the east or whether the people should face the east or face Jerusalem. Because in those days, if you wanted to pray, you have to first locate the direction of ad Orientem. Because people believe that unless they were facing the Orient, their prayers were not answered. But like I said, it is still a controversy today between those who still believe that we have to do ad Orientem, we have to face the east because of this verse that Jesus set his face to go to Jerusalem and nothing was going to stop him. And if you continued reading this verse, when they got to the Samaritan territory, another province, because there were 4 provinces. There was Galilee, there was Judea, where Jerusalem is capital, there was Samaria, and then there was Idumea and Perea. These are the provinces of Israel in those days. So if you checked on the map, in going to Jerusalem from Galilee, you have to cross the province of Samaria. Samaria was where the Samaritans were. And so our text today says, the Samaritans did not receive Jesus because his face was set towards Jerusalem. Now, why did they not receive Jesus? Because they wanted him to stay with them. But Jesus says, no, we have to go to Jerusalem. In this interpretation of the Samaritans, because they had a temple, They had the temple in Samaria. If you want to enjoy this whole story, you have to read John's Gospel, chapter 4. The Samaritans have built a temple on Mount Gerizim, and they believed that the territory of the Samaritans was a holy territory because Jacob built a well there. That is where the sons of Abraham, that's where they were. And they believed that that is a holy place, and Mount Gerizim is the place to go. But the rest of the Jews felt like, no, Mount Zion is the place to go. So at the well, the woman was arguing with Jesus, and the people also, when the people came, and Jesus says, we must go to Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the place to go. They interpreted it that Jesus was approving Mount Zion, the temple in Jerusalem. But as we know, when Jesus will arrive in Jerusalem, he's going to tell them that he has come to replace the temple in Jerusalem. He did not come to Jerusalem to approve the temple. He comes to replace the old covenant, the Old Testament. Jesus becomes the new covenant. The Last Supper, the body and blood of Christ, will replace the old covenant. And when he got to Jerusalem, he's going to tell them that he cried, he wept over Jerusalem because they did not acknowledge the time of the visitation of God. So that is what gives us more evidence that Jesus is true God and true man. He himself says that Jerusalem did not receive the visitation from God. So he calls himself God. And so he drove out the people out of the temple and said, a new way is going to be inaugurated, which we call the new covenant. So today's text will begin to set us on all the texts. They are called the travel texts of Jesus. So starting from today, we are going to be seeing what Jesus will be doing as he goes from village to village until he arrives Jerusalem. But like I said, whenever Jerusalem is mentioned, we don't remember the city as Jerusalem as a town. We remember the mysteries that happened there. They are called the mysteries of salvation. And those mysteries are what we celebrate in our worship. And that is what we are called to acknowledge. The Last Supper, the body and blood of Christ, the prayer in Gethsemane when Jesus was in the garden, that prayer, that communication, where adoration, he asked the people to pray in solitude with him. You know, the cross, embracing the cross, carrying the cross, the death, which we call the passion and death of Jesus on the cross. We remember his resurrection. It happened in Jerusalem. We remember everything. We remember the ascension also happened on Mount Olives. So it all started with Luke chapter 9, verse 51, where he set his face to go to Jerusalem.